So a couple of weeks ago, I sent out a tweet that said that anxiety and depression actually not a bad thing. I even made a comment on it on my last video right at the very end. And before that, I talked about how to get over anxiety and depression. And some of the interesting pushback to this whole process has been on both sides of the spectrum. The first one was, how in the world could you say that? That's completely an unbiblical process. Why in the world are you saying this? Here's some scripture of why you are wrong. They didn't technically tell me why they were right, and they made me feel more depressed, maybe a little more anxious about my own faith, which, let's be honest, is unbiblical in and of itself. But then there's the other side. So that first side, don't care, they can take it to Jesus, that's their problem. For me, the other side, though, was really interesting because there was a couple of different people, about 5 different people that had said, Jeremy, what are you talking about? Explain this to me because this is something I struggle with. Anxiety, depression, this is something I go through a lot. How in the world do I face this? What do you mean by it's an okay thing? And for me, there's 2 different aspects of it. There's the clinical side of things, which I want to get into just a second, and then there's the biblical side, which, let's be honest, I don't have a thesis to present, so I'll just kind of be brief about it. For me, clinically, I see a lot of different people that come into my clinic, and they are suffering from panic disorder, agoraphobia, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, major depressive disorder, bipolar. They're having suicidal ideation in this process, whatever it is, that they are really struggling with something that's going on. And for me, the first thing I kind of like to do after we've done all the intake stuff is, just so you know, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression isn't a bad thing. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm struggling with trying to find a job. My marriage is in ruins. I'm on probation. I'm addicted to drugs because I can't feel what is going on. I don't want to feel it anymore. How in the world can you tell me that this is okay? And for me, the way I look at it, at least clinically, is this understanding that it's a spectrum. You have too much anxiety, too much depression, and it's feeling overwhelming. But the opposite can be true too, where you have no anxiety, you have no motivation to go do something. That's a bad thing. You have no depression, you lose someone in your life and you're like, who cares, whatever. That's a bad thing. I will tell you, maybe there's something wrong and we need to work on that. For me, it's almost like it's the idea of ice and friction. If you are on ice and you want to move forward in your vehicle, you're not going anywhere. Your tires are just going to spin and spin and spin. And if you're driving forward and you want to stop, you need friction to stop. And you're going to wreck if you get on ice. Same thing's true if you have too much. You're trying to drive in mud, you're not going anywhere. And if you try to stop and you hit a wall and smack, too much friction, you're going to crash, probably die. And so those are the spectrums that I'm working within. And for me, that's how I see this. A little bit of sadness when you lose someone, it shows me how much you care about this process. It shows me how much you care about them. They meant something to you. And it burdens you that they're not with you anymore. That is a good thing. And then you have the anxiety, you have the stress of, I've got to get this video done, I've got to get my paperwork done, I want to be a good father, I want to be a good spouse, I have to stop doing the things that I'm doing. It's a good thing, it's a motivation for you to do that. If you had none, you would miss deadlines and just completely wreck your business. And then you'd be homeless, or you wouldn't have a family, or you would just really run over people in life. And so having that motivation to do those things is great. And for me, the biblical understanding of this whole process, people love to throw around Jesus when he was doing his Sermon on the Mount. Don't worry, don't fret about things. And he's talking from a worldly versus spiritual aspect. If we live our life in a worldly understanding, then we should not have any kind of anxiety and depression. Because we have a Father that loves us. We can go to him with our prayers. We can just sit in his wonderful goodness. And that is all absolutely true. But the truth of the matter is we're in a fallen world. We in and of ourselves sin. And that sin has consequences that has ramifications for millennia. And so how in the world can we continue to move forward in this process? And we should hate the fact that we do these things and we need to change. But at the same time, you can have that motivation and say, you know what? This worries me that there are people out there that don't know who Jesus is. I am scared for them. I am so worried for them. And I think it's that holy and a godly worry for that. Just think about the different people that worried in Scripture. Heck, Jesus was so upset that he sweat blood. He was so consumed with this emotions of what was going to happen and being on the cross and taking on so much sin. He went forward though. And for me, that's where we denounce this process of if your worry and your anxiety is so much that you can't impact this world for the spiritual aspects that it has, if your light is not shining because of your anxiety and depression, you need to work on that. Let it go. Let God have it. But if it's just a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression, a little bit of, that humanity that God gave us, that ability to have emotions and show something to them, that is not a bad thing. So I hold to it. And for the people that say that that's a terrible thing, you better check yourself in that process, because you are asking to not to be like God. You're asking yourself not to be like Jesus in the process. Jesus wept when Lazarus was dead. He cried. And so for me, I challenge you guys, if you struggle with anxiety and depression, talk to somebody, talk to God, find your supports, pray, read, do all those things. And if you're so stressed that you can't go to Walmart because it's too crowded and too scary, or you're worried about what people are going to think about you, just be with people. Talk to a counselor or a pastor. If you're a pastor, talk to friends, talk to your spouse, talk to your parents, whatever it takes. And for you that decide that this is not a problem that Christians should have, shut up. Just shut up. So I pray that we find relief in this process. If you're feeling so overwhelmed that you have that anxiety and depression, I pray that you find peace. I pray that you find it in God and that you let Him control you. And if you have a little bit of anxiety about the bills, your sermon getting done, hold on to it and know that's your humanity and that's a motivation for you to move forward, because it's a good thing. It's worth it. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm very passionate about this. It's probably my last comments on this in a video format for at least for a while. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And if you have some scripture that you want to refute against me, that's fine. I probably won't read it, because I know what I believe and I know it's biblically sound. But if you guys want to have a conversation, I'd love to have a conversation. If you want to yell it on me social media, I'll probably block you. It's okay. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Leave your comments down below. Let's have a talk. Let's have a great conversation. I'll see you guys next time. See ya.